like Germany, for example, which is much smaller militarily. But the United States and NATO in that framework, these are the only actors that can actually do things in this regard. Nordic defense cooperation might be fine, as Carl mentioned as well, but it is done essentially for economic reasons, not for deterrence purposes. Finland and Sweden together cannot deter Russia. That goes without saying in my mind. And the only way that this could change is if, as Jana was kind of alluding to, if the United States loses interest completely in Europe, then we could have something like a European re-emergence of territorial defense issues, but that would more likely be in the way of the EU taking over NATO's assets rather than building up EU assets of its own. But if we look at, returning to your question, whether we are safe now, Rina, I would say that what has happened recently, since 2014, is reassuring, if not, an end in themselves. We've seen one American administration starting out with a very pro-Russian perspective, making all forms of overtures to the Russians about how friendly the relationship between Moscow and Washington would be, how good it would be for the world if Russia and the United States could be friends again, and how little the opposition from smaller countries in this part of the world really mattered in that setting. And that was the Obama administration. That was the Obama reset policy of 2009 through roughly 2011-12. And that was based, in my mind at least, on a very profound geopolitical misunderstanding on behalf of the Americans. They thought, given the fact that Mr. Medvedev, and not Mr. Putin, was the president of Russia, Obama and Medvedev had apparently a very good personal relationship. They thought, the Americans that is, that this could be extrapolated towards a much more easy and peaceful and friendly attitude also in terms of military predispositions. So given the decisions in 2012 where the Pentagon actually, under the leadership of, or the directions of Mr. Obama, actually withdrew all heavy tanks from Europe. All American heavy tanks were withdrawn at the spring or around the spring of 2013 or so. And they were gone for about a year, until then, of course, the invasion of Crimea and the aggression against Ukraine of Russia in 2014. Then it all was kind of reversed. We have now heaps of different initiatives from the American side and from NATO's side in terms of the European Reassurance Initiative, the Atlantic Resolve Operation, the NATO's Enhanced Forward Presence, as Ambassador Tarkia was mentioning as well. And the good thing with all that is, of course, that we have now a multilateralization and multinationalization of the security problems, not only of the Baltic states, but also Poland, and indirectly as well of Sweden, actually. Less so Finland, perhaps, because Finland is a little bit farther to the north, but it's still kind of engaged in all this. These forces, though, the 4 battalions that we have in the Baltic states and Poland, and some additional companies from other countries as well, they are tripwire forces. They're not meant to repel an entire Russian invasion, of course, but they're made as a tripwire for the Russian armed forces to essentially engage the entire Western world, should they do something stupid, that is, embarking on some kind of a military invasion here. I find these measures to be pretty balanced and well thought through in a way. It would be even better, of course, if we had a visible American military contingent, let's say a company in each Baltic country, for example. That would be even more of a signaling thing. And we don't know if we get that, but it's a good idea. And if we look at the Trump administration policies, the debate here in Sweden is a bit more kind of complex perhaps than in Germany, I don't know really, but we do have a majority here that really dislike Mr. Trump personally, apparently in the Swedish population, but we do have people as well, both on the extreme right and the extreme left, that actually like him a lot. Yes. So, I mean, these are not majority figures, but they're there, and it's we can't say that everybody hates him. That's my only point on this. But if we look at the other people that surround him, actually, and whom he has been appointing the last few months, Tillerson, the Secretary of State, Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, McMaster, the National Security Advisor, they know Russia very, very well, and they deal with it as any other traditional American Republican or Democrat, especially Republican, I would say, would deal with it. Namely, as a highly adversarial country which needs to be in check. And this is why I would say we haven't seen any major changes of the Obama policies at all from Mr. Trump. I mean, we have seen nothing, no orders coming from the Pentagon to EUCOM and Stuttgart saying that they should withdraw forces or scale down their exercise patterns or not be in the Baltic states or so on. The only thing that Mr. Trump actually has said is that all states in NATO should pay 2% of their GDP on defense, which the Baltic states already are doing at least next year. All the Baltic states. Estonia is doing it already, Poland is doing it already, and the other two Baltic states will be doing it next year. So I think in that perspective, it's pretty fine. We know that the American interest in this region is big, much bigger than what Trump's tweets are telling us. But his tweeting is something else in my mind. I mean, it's not translated into real policy. Finally, then, and I can't resist kind of continuing the colleagues' ideas on Sweden and Finland. I agree on much or almost everything he said. The major thing, of course, with a mutual or combined Swedish and Finnish NATO membership would be, of course, that this would be the logical conclusion of current Swedish policy, especially in terms of the host nation support treaty and all that. But it would also be, and this is the crucial point, a contribution to the general containment policy of the Western world in general. Thus, a major hindrance for any form of Russian military adventurism, and thus also a means of strengthening peace and stability in this region. And this is actually something that an increasing number of Swedes have begun to understand, which is understandable. And that Russia is against it is also very understandable. I will end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I very much agree that much is in front of us because of the Russian-speaking minority in the country. And this issue turned up especially after the Russian invasion in the eastern Ukraine and the scenarios of little green men. And this was almost directly translated into the same scenarios in the Baltic states, which maybe we do not agree with. But Eitvidas, what do you think? What is hybrid warfare in Lithuania? It's Estonians, I mean, at least policymakers, they are very reluctant even to say the word hybrid, because there is nothing hybrid about it. There are these old influence operations and a strong military to sort of back them up. How do you see hybrid warfare?
Thank you very much, Rina, for the nice introduction of this word, hybrid, but also thank the organizers for the conference and inviting me to speak. I think the very idea that the Baltic societies or Baltic diasporas in the countries, not only in Sweden but in many other countries, acting like a sort of censors. There is something wrong around, not problems. No, we hear previously that the Baltic Sea region, the Baltic three countries doing well, but there are these societies in various countries as like a center that something need to be discussed. And that's why, from this perspective, very much welcome the very idea to organize this conference and to continue in the future to make it a regular event to take stock on the situation in the Baltic Sea region. Hybrid, I definitely would agree with the very logic that this is the artificial name for the problems which exist from centuries. If you go for the Chinese thinkers, the very idea that waged the war without sending army was started by Sun Tzu, and this is not something new. If you take the history of the Baltic countries, recent history, we lost our independence in the 1940s, literally in the hybrid scenarios. No open Russian invasions, but NKVD forces, Baltic trained Communist Party members sent from Moscow and so on. So very much of the hybrid scenarios. But the hybrid came about, especially after the Ukraine crisis, as a sort of as a litmus test or as an indicator that we were paying much attention to other problems over the last years to the problems to like Islamic fundamentalism in Afghanistan, and we also as NATO was for decades was paying problems for the conventional forces, but we lost this importance of looking to something else cooking around. And Ukraine was reminded that apart from this conventional threats, there are other problems. Although it was one sense, I might agree with what you were sort of saying about Estonia, that it's very artificial to divide threats into the baskets. No, we deal with a country, and I name Russia very openly, that we deal with a country which use all methods: intimidation, support of political parties, money laundering, energy policy, conventional scenarios as appropriate. And we saw, again, our countries saw this in case of the Ukraine. Ukraine, again, this was where this hybrid sort of thought came in NATO-EU corners. But Russia was using all possible scenarios. So the Spetsnaz was sitting in Crimea, and the time came when there was power vacuum after Maidan, Yanukovych fleeing country, they start to operate. East Ukraine, again, and Russian special forces, dressed as civilians, were starting to take over military buildings, the municipality buildings in Donetsk, Luhansk, accompanied with then sort of so-called Cossack supporting elements to the local uprising, militia. But Debaltseve, where Ukrainian army was overcoming, the Russians sent regular forces. Why? Because they saw that not enough of this so-called militia. So this is what we also try to inject the same thinking in NATO-EU. That is very artificial to split into the basket. We need to start to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is Russia's aggressiveness. So this is the problem. Not what Russian elements are using, but this is the problem. The Russian posture against NATO-EU. The Russia's attempt to weaken EU. So when I speak about Lithuanian problem to my Western interlocutors, I tend to say Putin's target was not Baltic countries. Putin's target now is to destroy NATO, EU, to weaken NATO, to destroy transatlantic link. Putin also, Russia is also is ready to accept certain risks, and this is what famous expert of the Nordic of the Central European Baltic security, Edward Lucas, once was saying, actually here in Stockholm in conference a few years ago, that what is the big difference between West and Russia? Russia is eager to lie, we not. Russia is eager to fight, we not. Russia is eager to invest in defense, we not. So this is the problem. So when we see the Baltic region, and now I'm coming to particular Baltic problems, of course the biggest problem accompanied to this problem of the Russia's aggressiveness, Russia changing European order, is that Putin and Russia don't want to agree with the very independence of our countries. So this is the problem. Putin cannot accept that we are going out of the Russia's zone of influence. This is the problem, and this is what we need to tell to our West, not about the various mechanisms Russia is using in our countries, but to tell the big story. Russia is not ready yet to accept Baltic independence. Of course, Kaliningrad was mentioned here, big problem for Lithuania, AOD, area denial, Russia's potential placing Iskander to the region. Recent Lithuania's intelligence service threat assessment, which was made public last week, specified that Russia can wage open military attack on Lithuania in 24 hours, period, without any additional forces from abroad. But as you, Irina, rightly said, the security challenges are much broader than the conventional. And if you read a recent study which was made on the Baltic security challenges, it says very specifically that apart from the conventional threats, existential threats Russia is posing to the Baltic countries as far as the conventional threats. Of course, the Russian hybrid scenario is very much likely. And again, the Ukraine crisis was reminded to us that this is real. This is not only historical reminiscence. I mentioned 1940s. Not only that these hybrid methods, maskirovka, were used during the Cold War period. Again, nothing new. But we finally have the situation when the country, Russia, is not only eager to use this, but they have shown that they can do this very masterfully in case of Ukraine. So this is why I think we see the role of us, Central Baltics, Central Europe, Poland, to deliver this message to the West. Be ready to all these scenarios as well. Sometimes in the West, and this is what I see my role as well as ambassador for hybrid threat in the internal coordination within the country, but also speaking with our allies, that sometimes there is a sort of misunderstanding what this is about. Sometimes people think of Russia's propaganda, information war, sort of Cold War task news agency improved. But the problem is that Putin got into much bigger and much more advanced scale. And why? Because Putin now is using biggest our achievements, democracy, openness. So, if Lithuania, Sweden or other NATO allies would be totalitarian country, it would be very easy to cope with the Russian propaganda. You close all Russian channels. Like unfortunately, I've been last week to Ukraine, and Ukrainians very proudly said, we close all Russian channels. Yeah, it's possible, but we open country, and we have also initiated this within the Lithuanian legal system, that we can use this coercive measures in case of the specifically identified Russian programs for certain period in very legal way. But you cannot close all TV channels because we open society. We thought to be open society, to be democratic country. And of course, Putin is using, which was not again case of the Cold War, globalization, internet. When Lithuania wants to close or considered of closing the one of Russian TV channels broadcasting to Lithuania, not lie, but nationalism and hatred. We easily found out that this channel is registered in London or in Stockholm. When Lithuania traces fake accounts and emails, fake emails directed against German troops in Lithuania, again, many of them are with origin in the West. So again, this is what we need to understand. We are coping with a country which is ready to use these elements and is making this in a very sophisticated way. And again, Russian propaganda is not on Russian hybrid war is not only TASS news agency improved. It's sponsoring political parties in the West. Le Pen was mentioned. Le Pen party was mentioned in the media, supporting anti-EU, anti-NATO movements, peace movements in various countries. Money laundering. Many of Russian oligarchs or money-related money now are settled in London. And this is a problem. And this money comes and to destroy our societies. How can we continue? And here my last points, what we should do about this. So actually, when we started with NATO EU to talk more about a hybrid, once I thought, I think it's very wrong, because we only talk about problems. We're not here even in this conference to talk about problems. We're here also to consider how to resolve. So one of the answers is resilience. Our societies, and this is what Rina, you alluded, societal resilience. Our society should be more resilient. We will not avoid Russia is using these methods. Putin is still for years ahead as a president. The whole state machinery is geared to use all this element. The German battalion which came to Lithuania immediately the second week was under information attack. it would continue. And we know, we speak with our German friends in Lithuania, it would continue. So we will not prevent Russia to doing this. What we should do is to be resilient. In technical resilience, cyber security, societal resilience, also mindset resilience. When we check Russia's influence in Lithuania, of course it's enormous big. I'm finishing. Lithuanians are watching Russian TV. Polish living in Lithuania are watching Russian TV. This is a problem. Not Polish living or Russian living in Lithuania, but their influence. But so far, we also identified that we are in the good path, because support for Lithuania's defense spending is still very high. Support for NATO troops in Lithuania is still very high. That means that Russia's aggressiveness, Russia using hybrid methods, also spark societal natural resilience. But of course, there are many more elements. Lithuania's conscription system, rapid reaction forces, what we do together, NATO, EU, and my final sentence, what we should do more in Nordic Baltic region. Nordic Baltic plus Germany plus Poland, to exchange of news outlet, support each other in bringing to our societies EU, NATO narratives, to have special security services exchange of information, and so on. So there is still vast sector which our countries should develop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I agree with you. I don't agree in the sense that Russia does not accept the Baltic states as independent countries. I think Russia has accepted us. Russia does not accept Georgia and Ukraine becoming independent of Russia, but this is another story.
I speak on my behalf.
Yeah, exactly, and this is my personal. But anyway, I would like to move on and leave the final word to Lolita. Do you have anything to comment or add to this on societal resilience? It was all taken care of. Like in the context of Estonia, for example, when we have 26% of Russian speakers in the country, I think the best strategy is, instead of calling them Russian speakers, just call them our own Russians.
Yes, thank you, Irina. It is not easy to be the last one to be speaking on Saturday afternoon after many really inspiring and very, very good thoughts. So I will just try to be very brief in my comments. Yes, it is so that internally the Baltic states in the beginning of 90s emerged very fragile. And probably my country, Latvia, was the most fragile one, because we had the largest population of the Russian-speaking people. We had a large territory, just a bit smaller than Lithuania, but almost 1 million less people, and different other aspects that actually made us very fragile. And also the support for a very concrete Western orientation that we managed to define in the beginning of 90s was rather fragile. It was not that easy to get this support. And I remember that my parents were standing next to the parliament building, the current parliament building in Latvia, and were counting votes, how the deputies voted for the Declaration of Independence. And when the threshold was reached, there was a huge celebration all over the country. So they literally needed to be counted one by one. And of course, to remedy this internal fragility from the beginning of 90s, we have tried to integrate ourselves in all multilateral formats possible. And of course, both NATO and the European Union have been extremely important for us in this regard. And when the president of the European Commission, Juncker, published his white paper laying out possible scenarios for development and future of European Union, we in Latvia were delighted when we saw that we are in the very core of all EU integration projects, just like our neighbors, Estonians and Lithuanians are. We've been members for 13 years, we've held presidency, we've joined Eurozone, we are in Schengen, and we want to stay in that core. because we very much believe that only these multilateral formats are the ones that can guarantee our independence and security. And this is extremely important for us, because once we go into a scenario where deals are done bilaterally, we definitely stand out to lose. And actually the whole region of ours stands out to lose. So this is extremely important for us. And it was very interesting that just recently, last Saturday, I spend my Saturdays in conferences, it seems, I was talking to a group of young politicians from Moldova and Ukraine, and I had to tell them about the success story of the Baltics, of our integration in these multilateral formats. And then I discovered a really striking fact for myself. Of course, it's a well-known fact, but basically